And could you state your name first?
Kiley McFadden.
Can you spell that out too?
KILEYMCFADDEN.
Got you. And how do you want to be presented in the credits? Just your full name or
Yeah, that's
anything
fine.
special? Okay, that's fine. What's your city, your city and state?
I'm from Dayton, Ohio.
Got you. And then occupation?
I'm a social worker.
Got you. Perfect. So the first question we're gonna start off with is, do you remember your first smartphone and when did you get it and how did it impact your life?
I do. I had the original iPhone, and I did not get that until my junior year of college. I had flip phones until then. I think it was super impactful because I realized I had access to literally everything in my hand at all times. It was no longer just texting and calling people. It was Facebook, and that's when Instagram started and Snapchat started and all of the social media started kind of exploding around that time.
When you first got that, did you see a disconnect with people who didn't have a phone, or did you feel like you were one of the first?
I was definitely the first. I lived with 4 other people, and I was definitely the first person that had one. So it was a little bit different. I feel like that's when people were like, "Oh, hey, I want that. I want that. I want that." And then everybody got one, and then everybody was. It was no longer having to carry around a flip phone and a digital camera and an iPod. Everything was in one place.
Gotcha. And the first smartphone was created over just 18 years ago in 2007. And that one device changed how we all interacted and connected with another, especially when social media came around. When did you first notice social media starting to shape kids' identities, in these past generations?
I would say I've noticed the biggest probably, I would say around 2017 is when I have seen it actually impact kids and kind of how they function.
And in which ways did you see that most impact, behavior-wise, or just always being on it? Which way?
Always being on it, which honestly I think kind of directly impacts behaviors. It was becoming kind of addictive, I think. A lot of issues with kids in schools, not focusing in class because they're on their phone. Kids, I feel like there was a bit of an upswing in delinquent activity, unruly activity, because kids are talking all day and kind of getting themselves into situations that I don't think they would even have access to without that phone.
And as a mom, what worries you most about your kids having and growing up with that phone?
I think definitely just being impressionable and trusting people, trying to get them to know that just because somebody's on the internet, just because somebody says they are who they are, doesn't mean that that's the truth. And I think just being kind of influenced heavily by other kids or other people. I feel like I've seen that in other kids take a hit to their confidence and their self-esteem, which obviously leads to behavioral and mental health issues too.
And then how do you feel, not just your own kids, but how do you feel people finding their identity now, growing up with that?
I feel like that phone shapes a lot of it. I just had a conversation with my oldest about when he's going to get a phone. And I'm like, you're about to be very disappointed. But he thinks 10 is the magic number. And I said, absolutely not.
How do you go about starting that conversation?
He asked, when am I allowed to have an iPhone? And I said, when you're 18 years old. And he thinks that I'm joking. And I'm absolutely not.
And then as a social worker, how do you talk to these young kids about social media and the pressures online?
We just have to have very direct conversations. I have had kids who have gotten themselves into very dangerous situations from talking to people that they think are teenagers, kids their age, and they're adults. I've seen kids that I would never think are going to be in juvenile detention, and they're in detention. Just a lot of it, relationships they form on social media from being on their phones, from people they don't even go to school with.
And then how do you come up with that conversation? How does it differ from a kid that you don't know as well versus your own son?
Um, I feel like I get a little bit more real with the kids that aren't mine. Um, Mostly because a lot of them are having that conversation because they're in a certain situation. So I know that they can handle the information that I'm telling them. They've seen a lot of the things that I'm going to talk to them about. Um, I don't want to kind of traumatize my kids too early and tell them some of the things that I've seen and I've witnessed when they're as young as they are. But I also want to make sure I'm very clear as to why I'm being that strict about a phone and being that strict about social media.
What do you think a big misconception that parents have about their kids online is?
That they're only talking to kids their age, kids they go to school with, and that they don't need to go through their kids' phones.
And then as a mom, what's been your biggest struggle or internal debate about giving your kids a phone? Like, why did you say you want to wait till they're 18?
I want them to be old enough to make educated choices. I don't want them to feel like they have to have certain things just because other people have it. When we had that conversation, I said, there's other phones. There's other ways that we can make sure that you can communicate with the people that you need to communicate with, but we don't need to do that with an iPhone or another adult smartphone until you're ready for that.
What's usually their response to that?
He thought it was stupid. He thought I was being extra.
Did he learn this from like his friends at school, or where did this
That was one of the first things he said back was, well, my friend has it and he's only 8.
Gotcha. I'm gonna get a little bit more into your like child welfare background and more geared towards questions sort of that. But in your experience, how has social media changed the types of cases you've seen since you started till now, basically?
I've worked in a lot of different aspects of child welfare and just like the juvenile world, and I've definitely seen an upswing in mental health concerns with kids, a lot more delinquency, unruly, skipping school, being extremely disrespectful to their parents or other authority figures, suicidal ideations, definitely a huge increase. That is something that I have frequently had to deal with, especially working with like middle school through high school kids.
I know you said you deal with the kids after, but have you ever noticed these signs coming up that they might act this way before it happens?
I've definitely seen it escalate once we get involved with that family, or if I've been working with a kiddo. You can kind of tell that there are certain things that will escalate their behaviors more, especially taking the phones away. I have seen kids absolutely like full crash out, spiral. We have to go to the hospital because their phone has been taken away.
Jeez. And what do you think causes that? Like, what about the internet do you think makes it get to that point?
I think being disconnected from people. Like, they want to have access to their friends or whoever they're talking to at all times. I mean, I have seen kids with snap streaks on Snapchat in the millions, and they're sophomore in high school. So.
And then from your perspective as a social worker and a mom, have you seen the emotional struggles facing the kids, cyberbullying, anxiety, depression, even suicide, like escalate?
Oh, absolutely. The amount of resources that have had to expand because there's such a need for kids' mental health to be addressed, and it's had to expand quickly because we have kids who, I mean, they're expressing that they're suicidal, going to the hospital, and there's not even space for them because the beds are full of other suicidal teens. A big bulk of that, I do believe, is cyberbullying. They'll go to school, everything will be fine, and then kids use their phones after school or sometimes during, and that's how they get access to those kids, is that way. They won't even do it face to face. It's through the phones.
And what have you seen the parents' roles be in these places with kids like who you have to deal with?
I think parents are scared, so they don't want to kind of push their kids over the edge. I think kids deserve some ounce of privacy, but at the same time, we need to be going through our kids' phones. You need to see who they're talking to. You should know what they're doing on the internet. You should know what pictures are on their phones. I think it makes parents really scared to put rules in place in their own house because they see the behavioral, the outbursts, the hospitalizations, the calling the police. I've had parents say that they feel like they're like trapped before, like they're trapped in their own home because they just want to keep things calm.
What would be your message to those parents on like to step up and like speak out?
There's so many parents have literally no idea what's going on in their kids' lives. Something insane will happen, and the first thing is, well, I had no idea. We've had children try to end their own lives. I had no idea. They'll tell you that they're being bullied. I had no idea. We would know if you take their phone at night and go through it. I feel like the most successful kids have, and I've had kids that have gone from chaos to, a different home environment, whether that be with family members or foster care or things of that nature. And they get those restrictions in place. They have to put their phone down at 9 p.m. The parents go through it, and I've seen those behaviors and the mental health challenges turn around completely.
So you think that most of like that like parental guiding throughout that process like helps a kid move forward and find their identity, I guess, through social media?
Yeah.
What do you think social media teaches kids about their identity and like who they should be?
I don't think it's positive necessarily. I think, especially right now in the world of like TikTok and Instagram, it's a lot of you have to have the best of everything. I feel like we were kind of getting out of that, and now it's coming back where kids only want name brand things. They only want the most expensive things because they're getting picked on at school. That kind of goes back to like the phones and stuff too. I've had kids say like, oh, well, I need a new phone because so-and-so has a new phone. And I feel like they're not actually finding themselves on their own, or they're just doing what they're being told to do on the internet.
And how do you feel like that affects them, like when they even come up to like say those types of things, like I need a new phone because so-and-so has one?
I don't even think they realize what they're saying. And I don't think kids even know how to like figure out who they are, like as people at times. I've had parents say like, they won't actually go hang out with anybody. They just want to sit in their room on their phone or sit in their room on their computer. I know I've had parents say that like their kids have never asked for like a friend to come over. It's just all about like they're making videos, or if they do hang out with friends, they're on their phones. Like they're not focusing on sports or music or anything like extracurricular. They're just wanting to do that.
And what was your definition of like authentic be?
That's hard. I think just kind of discovering who you are without other people pressuring you into figuring out who you are, or like you not just trying something because you saw it online. Like actually trying something. Like I've told kids so many times, I've had kids say like, oh, I want to play football. And I'm like, well, then go try to play it. I want to play basketball. So try out. I want to play the drums. Okay, let's get you into band. And they're kind of like shocked of like, oh, you're going to make me actually go do it? Okay. All right.
And then what does authenticity mean to the kids who are always like performing online? Like how would you show your kid that it's different from someone performing online that might be their same age and seeming like they have everything versus him?
We've had to have conversations like that with my oldest of everything on the internet is not true. People are only going to show you the best side of their life, and it's not possible for everyone's life to look like that. So just trying to make kids realize that just because like people are not going to show the worst side of their life or the most complicated side of their life on the internet. They're only going to show you the best stuff.
Do you think kids today like know who they are outside of social media? Like based off the ones who are posting and seem like they have it together?
I think some kids do. I really think The kids who have parents who have a good balance of being, I always say gentle but firm. Um, Kids who have those firm parents who have rules and expectations. I mean, I know kids who they just know, like it hits 9 o'clock and you go put your phone down. It goes in mom and dad's room. They'll charge it for you. I've had kids say, like, I need it for my alarm clock. And we're like, no, I can get you an alarm clock. They make those still. Like, it's seeing kids who have those, like, gentle but firm parents, I feel like are the kids who know themselves the best.
And those kids who you see like that, like, what do you think they're doing outside of like social media to learn their identity and be authentic?
I think those are the kids that I see have like a zero issue putting their phone down. The kids who will actually go and like be in a club or be in sports or do some kind of music, like do something outside of things that are just technology related.
And I think out of phrases. Like if your kid was online, he was posting and he was getting positive feedback and stuff like that, he was getting the likes, the comments and all that, how would you keep him grounded and like authentic in that way too?
That's hard. I think the biggest thing is that also being monitored. But, you know, just explaining that the things that you're showing online that's still you. So you need to be able to do those things without posting too. I think that's like a really hard thing because I've worked with kids who I'm like, you have how many followers? And like they have like a whole operation going, but that's the only thing that they do. Everything that they do is so they can record it.
And then as a mom, as you like, and as a professional, as you like work through your cases, what child like scenario has hit you the hardest?
I would say probably the people who their kids are going through something crazy and they have literally no idea. And then that makes me spiral a little bit and like worry that I'm going to end up being like that I don't want to be that parent. Like I don't want to trust my kids so much that I don't check their phone, that I don't take interest in what they're doing, that I'm not making them put the phone down. And I think that's why I've taken such a strict approach to when they're able to have access to those things.
I mean, what specific situations, like, you don't have to give names or anything like that, have you seen between a kid and their phone, like, tear them away from their family? Like, their digital life, like, taking them away from real life?
Kids running away. I mean, kids will meet people on Snapchat, I think is the biggest culprit for it. They'll meet people on Snapchat and then they'll convince them that they're another teen, or I've had girls who think they're going to go hang out with a girl from school and it's a guy and it's an adult. And I think I don't think parents realize that like that trust that you have with your kid, you can trust your kid and still check on them. So kids will have a whole mess going on and the parents are completely clueless. And I think that's probably the scariest thing for me.
And in your work, have you ever had to comfort a parent from situations like this? Or is it mostly just deal with the child?
Oh yeah, definitely talking to the parent. I mean, that's a big part of it is, you know, we're trying to positively influence kids who are, number one, teenagers are very stubborn, so they know everything and we know nothing. And I always tell kids I've been there and done that, so I promise you I'm not just like trying to scare you straight. I think that those are probably the hardest conversations I have to have is parents who just had no idea, and we've got their kids sitting in the emergency room and they're trying to hurt themselves. And, you know, just 6 months ago, everything was fine. So it's very emotional, especially for parents who I feel like they've actually tried. And it just hasn't worked.
in seeing those situations, how do you stay grounded? Like, you have to deal with those situations, deal with some of your own, and like eventually we'll have to deal with like maybe not to that extent, but some of these issues.
I think it kind of teaches me like what not to do with my kids. Not letting them have their phones in their room at night. We've kind of started that now. They're allowed to have like their kids' tablets. They're done by a certain time. They have to hand them over. They're not allowed to keep them in their rooms. Even down to like the Nintendo Switches, like those have to come out. We don't leave any screens in their bedroom. And I feel like seeing that through doing what I've done for so long, that has made me like be there's no wiggle room on that for me. That kind of, because we're just going to create the habit now. You have to hand it over, and then they're going to know that it's just going to be second nature to them when they get older.
Gotcha. All right, I'm gonna continue on. What do you wish parents understood better about the pressures their kids face online?
I think in that aspect I wish parents would kind of look back to how they were growing up. I like to joke that I'm old, but I'm not that old. I remember dealing with similar things. I mean, I obviously went to high school in like the MySpace era, so it was a little bit different, but it still was very much like, I remember getting home from school and that was the first thing we did was get on the computer. So just remembering like how we were influenced growing up, and that this isn't necessarily abnormal, but we do need to have conversations with our kids. We need to not sugarcoat it, be very direct about things. Because not every kid is going to have a caseworker or a probation officer or involvement with the court or even a teacher that is going to invest time in them. Like, that has to start at home.
And when do you think those conversations should begin?
I think as soon as your kids start using technology, to be honest. I have a 4.5-year-old, and he knows that too much time looking at the tablet, and he plays primarily educational games, but he knows like around a certain time, he'll bring his tablet out and say, here, I'm done, this is hurting my eyes. Like, just like teaching that as soon as they're able to start using those devices, just teaching them like, hey, it's not good for your brain to be on it for too long, or hey, it's not good for your eyes to be on it for too long. And that just kind of, I think, creates good habits for them.
So would you say that the ideal is like healthy relationship between a kid and like his social media or tablet or phone would be?
I think just having some balance, like, let's put them down while we're having dinner. If we're going to go to a family thing, we don't need to be on our phone the whole time. I understand like kids love to make TikToks and they love to make, send Snapchats and stuff like that, but there has to be some kind of balance. Let's balance out with some human interaction. And I used to think that was like the goofiest thing ever, of like, oh, kids don't know how to talk to people. But like as time goes on, like kids literally don't know how to talk to people. So like just trying to teach them like we can be personal without being on our phone.
You talked about that balance. So like if you can create one rule for all social media platforms, like what would it be?
Well, number one, I wish there was a way to like force an actual age verification or something along those lines that makes it so like if the kid's not 18, they need to have parental permission to have those apps or an account, because kids have secret accounts. And I have plenty of parents who are like, well, I'm just not tech savvy. And it's really difficult because I feel like the kids with those parents actually absolutely take advantage of it too. Like, well, they won't figure it out because they don't know how to do it.
What do you think that comes from, like kids wanting to have a secret account or like the side thing?
I think they just don't want to get caught doing what they're doing, and they know it's wrong. I've had so many conversations with kids like, and what did you think what you were doing was okay? No. They know. Kids aren't dumb, even though they may do some dumb things sometimes. But I've seen kids get themselves in some really, really sticky situations, and it's really difficult to get out of some of them.
And how do you feel balanced staying informed without seeming like overprotective or like staying informed on like your own kid, like going through his phone. So like, how do you feel doing that?
I used to think like that I would not be that parent that would go through my kids' stuff, but I will happily go through every single one of them in depth and take notes at this point, just because things are getting out of control and it has not improved.
And then what advice would you give to a parent who's like afraid to take that step to do that?
You're going to have to deal with being uncomfortable for a little while. It's going to cause some tension. It takes time to build routines. It takes time to build good habits. And unfortunately, as the parents, we're going to have to be the ones that are uncomfortable for a little bit, showing our kids that we have the ability to enforce that. And we're going to enforce that because we're the parents, we're the adults.
And despite like all those challenges and difficulties of social media, like how do you, or what do you think, or what gives you hope about the future of this generation now?
I've seen a lot of kids who really don't care to be on their phone. I've seen a good mix. I've seen a good mix of kids who that is their lifeline. You take it away and they are going to absolutely spiral. And I've seen some kids who are like, I haven't answered a text message in 4 days. And like, they don't know where their phone is and it's dead or what. Like there's there's a good balance now. I feel like I'm seeing a lot of kids too. I just learned recently that like digital cameras are coming back. They would rather carry that around than be on their phone. And I'm like, heck yeah, go get a digital camera. Like do all of the things that I did that I had to do as a kid. Like I had to work for that. Like if you wanted to take pictures, you better make sure that's charged because you don't have a phone that's going to do it. So I feel like I feel like we're kind of like going back a little bit and they want to disconnect from technology a little bit. So that makes me a little bit hopeful. I feel like it's maybe going to get better.
Would you say that's your favorite thing about this generation, like going back and like bringing the old school things back, or do you have like something else?
No, probably that. They're definitely. I've met some kids who are like very intrigued about like the old flip phones, and I feel like that's aging me significantly. But we have those conversations all the time.
And how do you want your boys to feel about themselves, regardless of what social media tells them?
Secure. I want them to be proud of who they are and know that they can come to myself and their dad with literally anything. So many kids are so scared to tell their parents stuff, and like I've always said like I don't want that to be my kids. I want them to be able to come to me or their dad with whatever. If there's an issue, then we can figure it out. You don't have to figure it out on your own.
And how do you create that safe space for them to come to you?
I think having difficult conversations, having the conversations of why I don't want you to have an iPhone until you're much older, or, sometimes we do have to have chats about stuff I see that kind of just comes with the territory, I think, of having a mom that does a job that's not exactly the most pleasant sometimes. But I think that is eye-opening, especially as they get older.
What do you think your children's generation will look like if nothing changes from now?
We're going to have some serious mental health issues. We've got children's hospitals expanding their mental health services like crazy. Dayton just got a brand new inpatient unit. Cincinnati Children's has multiple inpatient units, and they are full a lot of the time. I've had kids have to go to other states because there's no beds available in Ohio. I really do think it kind of stunts kids' brain development. I think kids are trying to mature way too fast, and it's extremely detrimental. I think the bullying is out of control, and I know from talking to acquaintances of mine who do have kids that are much older, like middle school, high school, it is a big issue right now. And getting anyone in a position of authority to take that seriously is difficult too.
How would you help those kids who don't really have like a solid figure of authority, like they may have a mom or a dad, or they're in a foster home or something like that? How would you help them figure that out?
I definitely always try to, like, obviously, as being someone who is in contact with these kids a lot, try to be that support for them, but also help them identify supports themselves outside of their home. We have a lot of kids who, their counselor will be their person that they talk to, or, if they do have a therapist. School resource officers have become a great support, and also they provide a lot of guidance too. I've had kids who have gotten themselves into situations, and the SROs who they've gone to, and they've kind of helped them navigate that, helped the family navigate that. Just because we've seen such an upswing in substance use and crime too, those individuals are very helpful.
What advice would you give to those counselors and those authority figures that aren't necessarily related to the kids? What advice would you give to them to help them throughout the process?
Just listen, pay attention. I worked in an environment where I was with kids all day long, and if you just open your ears for a little while, you'll hear them talk about some wild stuff. And just making sure you pay attention, pull kids aside before things get too out of control. Ask kids, hey, what's going on? Be a little nosy. You're allowed to be nosy with kids. So I always tell people that you're allowed to be nosy. You're allowed to ask questions of children. You don't have to tiptoe around it.
And if your kids were to watch this interview years from now, what's one thing you'd want them to hear now?
That they're their own person, and they don't have to meet people online or try to appease people online or show them a part of them that doesn't really exist. That they're allowed to just be who they are and be comfortable with that.
Perfect, thank you. That's it.
Dang.
So wrap.
I have some questions.
Oh, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for what you said up until this point. I feel like you would give some really good insight, especially for our age group. We're kind of in that medium ground of where we had technology growing up, but we're not fully relying on it like the younger generations are today. So I think we sometimes forget on how much it plays a role in those younger people's lives, especially in those really developmental years. So thank you for your insight on that. So I'm going to go back to a few points that you talked about throughout the interview, and I want you to expand more on them. So earlier on, you kind of described the way that young people use phones as addicted. So what makes you use the term addicted specifically instead of overuse, obsessed? What about addicted specifically or about phone usage makes you use that term?
Kids will do anything to get them back when they're taken. I've seen kids have secret phones, their friends have given them a phone. I've had kids we have a lot of the schools now who are locking up phones in the pouches, and they have a decoy phone they put in the bag so that they don't have to get rid of their phone. Have seen kids fully spiral crash out. We're taking them to the ER because they've gotten their phone taken away. And I've looked at kids before and say, what's in there that is that dire? I'm talking to my friends. Well, your friends will be okay for right now. You're literally going to the emergency room right now. So I think they can wait.
Yeah. Building off of that, kids throw tantrums when they're punished or something gets taken away from them. I feel like, especially young kids, tantrums are kind of normal and growing up, but specifically, you are describing crashing out, spiraling when it comes to removing that phone from their life. What is it, do you think, from your opinion and from where you stand, about the phone that is different than a normal tantrum from a kid?
I think it's having access to everything. They aren't used to having to wait to talk to their friends or talk to whoever they're talking to on their phones. I also think I've had instances where then it's come out that You know, they're doing things they're really not supposed to be doing. There's photos on their phone they're not supposed to have on their phone. They're sending things that they're not supposed to be sending. And I think they know mom and dad are going to find that. Someone's going to find that. And that's part of it too. I've had kids where their phones have been taken, they've been gone through, and now we're dealing with law enforcement and things like that. And it becomes this whole big thing.
What do you think is so enticing about the digital landscape that makes not only kids, but just people in general be so rebellious? Like, I mean, we see activity online from adults even. Like, that is just, like, doing things online that would just not be okay to do in person. What is it about that digital landscape that you think, like, makes people want to rebel?
Kind of like you said, you don't have to do it in person. They can hide behind that phone. If they don't want to answer anymore, they don't have to. If they don't want to engage anymore, they don't have to. You're not put in an uncomfortable position because you're not looking somebody in the face. It's strictly behind a screen. So, and that's why I say, like, I used to think that was ridiculous when I was younger of like, oh, people don't know how to talk to each other anymore. No, people literally don't know how to talk to each other anymore. Especially like high school age. Just don't know how to hold a conversation. And I always thought that was insane. And now that I've been in my role for as long as I have been, and I also have kids, and I see all these other kids, and I'm just like, holy moly, no, people were right. Okay.
Something that we wanted to take a new angle on with this documentary is really capitalize on that we're voices from Gen Z, so we come from a place of understanding the enticement of being online, and even you can relate. You mentioned being on MySpace after school and just like the love for it and being online, and it's fun. Like when you have access to the entire world's information in the palm of your hand, like why wouldn't you want to be on it? How could we, from your experience, motivate kids or frame a perspective to make kids see the value of being offline? Like, how do we meet kids where they're at to make them see and get them motivated that there is appeal to being off the internet?
I think that's hard. I think number one, setting an example. Also putting our phones down. I'm guilty of it too. I mean, my husband is literally his job is being on the computer. So he's even tried to, now that our kids are getting older, like be more intentional of not working all the time, not being on the computer, not having his laptop open, and just trying to be present. I think the biggest thing is kids seeing adults do it too. When we have our phones in our hand all the time, why wouldn't our kids expect to have some sort of technology in their hands all the time?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's talk about you for a second. I want to go back to your MySpace days. And
Top 8, yeah.
What'd you say?
My top 8.
Yes, like, what was it about, like, social media then? Because that's square one. Like, MySpace is, like, where it all kind of started. What about MySpace that, compare it to what it is now? Like, what was different? What were still healthy parts of social media back then, if there were any? And, like, where have we lost the plot? Like, where have we, from A to where we're at now, what's that difference like? How have you seen it develop? And, you know, at what point have you seen that we took a turn for the worst?
I think MySpace, the biggest thing was, like, you had to work for it. Like, I taught myself how to code. Like, I had no business doing that. But it was kind of savage, though, because, you know, we would just be, like, kicking our friends off MySpace, like, blocking people, whatever. But I feel like we had to work for it. We did not have just, like, no one had Wi-Fi. Like, I had to use dial-up internet to get on MySpace. The only way that I'm going to get on it is if I set it up a desktop computer. I don't have it on my phone. I think the moment that we developed apps for Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and Snapchat, they're in our hands at all times. Like, I had no choice. I had to go to school and be at school. I couldn't be on MySpace. that was an after school thing. Like I earned that, and my parents had rules too. I had to be off, be off the computer at a certain time. I think really the moment we took a turn was when Facebook no longer required you to have a .edu email address to get it. That's, I think, when I saw everything like become very, like, people were fixated on it.
But, I mean, that's a really, like, specific point in the development of the internet, and I've never heard somebody say it that point, so that's really cool that you pointed that out.
Yeah.
I think you also said something really interesting about MySpace. You were like, oh, we could block and remove whenever we wanted. And I feel like today, if you block someone or unfollow them, it's like, oh my gosh, the end of the world. Like, we have this, like, that's so rude. I can't believe you did that. Like, but on MySpace, you did it willy-nilly, and it didn't mean, like, I hate this person in real life. Like, what can you say about that? Your generation versus ours, have we lost our sense of identity and being able to distinguish that online versus real life and how those interactions play a role?
Well, number one, I think it's you have to then block people on everything. Like, okay, we can go do it on Facebook. I'll do it on Instagram. I got to do it on TikTok. I got to do it on Snapchat. Like, before it was like, okay, well, I just kicked you off my top friends. Don't call me anymore. And if you want to call me, you're going to have to call my parents' house, and you're not going to do that. So we just, like, did not have, like, we were not as easily accessible back then. Like, if you wanted to get a hold of me, Godspeed calling my parents' house. Like, it was so difficult to do that you could easily remove yourself. Now people are just like, okay, well, I'll just I'll make a burner account. I'll make a backup account. Well, joke's on you, I have 3 Snapchats. Like, it's just, you're so accessible now. It's crazy.
Yeah. Also just like that sense of consumerism. Like, it's just so easily disposable, and you can keep creating more and getting more. Whereas, like you said, MySpace, you got to work for it. Like, you had to code to get online. Like, wow. Well, thank you for setting up that juxtaposition for us. I think that's a really important comparison that, we're trying to point out when it comes to how social media is developed. So thanks for your insight on that. And then one last thing. Throughout the entire time, you mentioned a lot about parents' role in our digital habits. And obviously we all grow up. We all start to have a sense of self, and, your parents aren't there all the time to hold your hand and take your phone and monitor you. So being a parent and your professional life and experience with children, as children begin to grow and understand actual core values of things, what core values in the center of all these digital habits, like you said, putting your phone down at a certain time, not being at the dinner table, not during those family events, those are like habits and strategies, but what are the core values as kids understand who they are and their identities that you would say are at the center of all those digital habits and growing a healthy relationship with being online?
I think parents, like, trusting their kids that they're going to follow the expectations. I don't have to nag you about it. Like I said, I've seen kids who have gone from, like, very chaotic environments to then they go to somewhere stable and these rules are put in place. And I've seen kids be most successful when there are people who are, I'm trusting you to give me your phone at 9. I'm trusting you to make sure you're not being sneaky. I'm trusting you to do this. I think that's a big piece of it, that and just being honest with our kids about, I am going to go through your phone. I think that just creates like I know not to do something I'm not supposed to be doing because my parents have put this trust in me, and even if I do, they're going to find out. So I think those are 2 big pieces of that.
Yeah. I guess what I was kind of asking more with that one, like I don't know, when you're a kid and your mom tells you don't come in the kitchen while I'm cooking because I don't want you to touch the stove and burn yourself. But as a kid, we don't understand what it means to, like, burn yourself. So your parent is just keeping you out of the kitchen. So, but as we get older, then we realize, oh, I can't touch fire because it's going to burn me. That's the core value at the center. So what is that core value that you would want your kids to know when they're probably our age and understand what it means to have values that carry us throughout life, to ground us? what are those grounding values? Is it, where's your sense of self-worth to where you can't find it on the phone? Did that make a little bit more sense in a way?
Yeah,
that you explained it?
I think helping them form that identity, taking the phone away, doing activities where we don't have the phones. I'm huge on sports, so I really think kids need to find, even if it's not a sport, I think kids need to do some form of like extracurricular, where they are getting praise from something that's not on the phone. You're not getting that from a comment or a like or whatever. You're getting that from another person. You're being told good job. You are being taught, that you have a schedule. You have, practices at 6. You got to be at practice at 6. I coached for a really long time. Like that was, stuff that we taught kids, that we put our phones away when we get to practice. We, praising kids. I see kids just thrive on positive praise. That's like such a big thing. And I see kids form an identity from that. So I really think just teaching our kids that we can be social and we can go and do really, really good things and be very successful outside of being on the internet.